we are going with my colleague, Petrika, to try to do a very entertaining concert all together. And I think the subject of our conference is pretty important because it shows that on the Roma inclusion file is not only important to look backwards, but is equally, if not more important, to look forward. And our event aims to look forward for a promising future. As you see, this event will have 2 panels, but we were aiming to be able to first give the floor to an Ukrainian entrepreneur, Natalia Yarkova. We know that Natalia Yarkova is having some connection problems. We are in contact with her, so don't worry, she is not sick. She's going to join the event. But there are some connections, so I think it will be important that we try to start. I see that Petrika, that was meant to chair the first panel, is back with us, so I will invite the persons on the first panel joining us on the stage, and I would like also to thank and welcome all the persons that are following this event online. I know that a lot of you send me a message that they are joining online, so thank you very much. And also thank you for the speakers that join both online and in person. So Petrika, the floor is yours.
Marta, thank you very much for a great job opening the conference on a very last moment. And I have to say you did fantastic, and I don't think any of the MEPs could have done a better job. So I'm very, very happy to be here with you on such an important occasion. It is the first time after more than 2 years that we are able to have this event live, face-to-face, and it is really, really a pleasure to see so many friends that I haven't seen for such a long time. Now, the subject is what can we do to support the Roma to regain what they have lost in the past 2 years after being hit by COVID, and how can we actually enable the new revolution, digital and green, to recover these gaps. I believe that our colleague from Ukraine has managed to connect. I wonder if my colleagues from technical can raise a hand if we can connect her. Because while all of us feel that our lives are difficult and we don't have all the things that we want, there are a number of brothers of ours from the Roma community, which on top of discrimination and poverty, they have the worst thing in life, which is war. So I have managed to bring over together two Ukrainian women who are very brave and who are currently in Romania. They're working together with our partners in the country with Aracel. And I think it's very important to give them a few minutes to describe to us briefly how they want to address the European Parliament and the people in the European Commission and in Brussels. So Isaura, if you want to speak in Romanian, and then Anastasia can translate, or if Anastasia can speak for the both of us, I think would be very good. Thank you very much for making the time.
Good afternoon, but I cannot hear and see Isaura.
Okay, so Anastasia, maybe in case if Isaura cannot connect, maybe you...
I can see her, but her mic and cam is mute, so she has to unmute, or someone has to do it.
I think maybe she has to do it herself.
1 moment. Yes.
So while Anastasia and Isaura manage their technical issues, I'd like to tell you a bit the story of what we're trying to do when it comes to Ukraine. So when the war started, there was this image that came into the press that Roma people stole a tank. So it was the first thing that came in a few days after the war started, and it was very impressive because few days later, Ukrainians who have done the same thing have not stolen the tank, but they've captured the tank. So it was in a heroic way, whereas when it comes from the Roma, especially in the Romanian society, it was with a bad connotation. So I think to me this is a very important thing to recognize that there's still quite a lot of Roma who have lost exactly the same thing as all of the other Ukrainians who have left behind their businesses. We have invited Natasha, who's an entrepreneur in Odessa and who was selling clothes and had a good business supporting her family and had to leave everything behind. Simply to save her family. So Natasha is currently in Romania trying to make a new life for herself. So likely she will not stay in Romania, but move over west towards Germany. I wonder, in case we have Anastasia and Isaura, we don't have them. Then I think we should probably move ahead with our first panel, where I have very distinguished panelists. So we have Orhan Hussein from RCC, who's gonna tell us a bit about their work in the Western Balkans and the great job that they're doing with the government. I have near me Mrs. Violeta Najdenova from the Open Society Foundations here in Brussels, and I think Violeta is going to tell us a bit about what the OSF is trying to do in order to understand a bit more how is the European Commission planning to support the growth of the industry, but also trying to identify which are the gaps that prevent the most efficient use of these resources when it comes to the use in the European Commission, in the Roma communities. Then I have on my right Mrs. Liselott Isaksson from the DG NEAR, from the Civil Society Unit D5, who's going to tell us again few things about the projects that they are supporting in the Western Balkans, and obviously how we can do even a better job in the future. We also have a new panelist from
Mrs. Dragana Marjanovic. She is in the EBRD. She is part of the Gender Mainstreaming and Access to Service Directorate, and Dragana has already, before she joined the EBRD, an experience to work with the Roma community. Dragana is with us online. Dragana. Hi. Okay, yeah, bravo, Dragana, you managed. Thank you.
Dragana, thank you very much for joining. So I would say I have a presentation prepared for this. I wonder if the presentation is ready. Right. So I think the title of the presentation is Leaving No One Behind, which is really the whole center of everything that the European Commission is trying to do. And we're looking at this from the civil society perspective. And I think our role is to try to challenge our kind friends from the European Commission on this specific sentence. How can we actually make sure that we are not leaving anyone behind, especially in these times? So if we can go to the next slide. So the Roma community is a big, one of the largest ethnic minorities in Europe, and it has a substantial human capital potential. There are studies done by the World Bank and other institutions which calculate how much money Europe and the countries which host a big Roma population are losing simply because these people are on one hand not working, which means they don't generate any sort of capital. They cannot buy things to pay VAT, but because they don't work, they are actually a net cost for the state, since they don't have a health insurance, but they're also on welfare. And the biggest potential of the community is the fact that the community is very young and is very vibrant, but is not sufficiently skilled and also is not sufficiently included when it comes to having access to the job market. So if we go to the next slide. So when COVID came, everybody was affected, but not everybody was affected in the same way. And I think our picture with the ship on the first slide shows that all of us were in the same storm, but not everybody was on the same ship. Some people were on yachts, other people were on leaky boats. And the Roma community, being much poorer and more discriminated than the others, had much more, fewer savings to go over this period, but also fewer contacts and opportunities. So we, together with DGNIR, we wanted to ask the question, what's actually going on? Like in the Roma communities, 2 years after COVID, where are the people? So we organized info sessions, we organized a lot of face-to-face meetings with people where we try to understand how are things going. So in the past period of time, in the past 6 months, we spoke to about 1,500 people. Some of them were unemployed, some of them were businessmen, and the results were, I would say, results that would not really surprise anyone. But at least at this point, we have some data-driven research which validates this. So if we go to the next slide. So here we looked at this, and the result is that for unemployed people, about 69% in Macedonia changed their employment status. This does not mean that before they were unemployed and now they are employed. So they used to have some sort of income, and then COVID made them lose that. Same thing in Serbia, and I think the next slide will show us a very similar situation for the business. A lot of businesses, we as REDI, our whole mission is to develop businesses and to help them grow. Unfortunately, in the past 2 years, most of the requests we had was closing down businesses and helping entrepreneurs and businessmen to fire people, just because they wanted to prevent their businesses from dying. So if you go to the next slide. So we're speaking about a missed economic potential in the past 20 years. I'm not going to go through the details in the slide. I can make this presentation available. We're looking very, very deeply, we as an organization, we're looking very deeply not at what the level of discrimination. I think there's a lot of people who are looking at this, but we're looking at the economic potential. How much can we actually bring in to the state budget? So I think you have there the numbers. We've reviewed them briefly. And I think we need to see how can we unlock this economic potential. So if we go to the next slide. So we're always talking, whenever we speak about Roma community, we're always talking about how much money we have, how many programs exist, how many resources there are, with the only thing saying, you guys just need to go and apply. The problem is that even for myself, which I have an over the average level of education, my colleagues in Radi, everybody has master's levels. Believe me, I go through this and I read the documents and I don't understand. So the language and the mechanisms are so complicated that even us find it extremely difficult. So we said, we started looking at this like, okay, so we have the opportunities, but like before, money was not the issue. So trying to see how can we actually improve this. So we go to the next slide. So before, I mean, we've seen, this is some data from 2019, we looked at ESF spending. So we've seen that there was about 2 billion specifically allocated for Roma communities. So it was available close to 2 billion. About 1.5 was specifically allocated, but only $500 million or less than $500 million were actually spent. So substantial amount of resources had to be redistributed towards other areas because especially Romania and Hungary did not absorb the funding. And there's multiple reasons for this. So if we go to the next slide. Right, so I think here, this is the starting point of today's discussion, right? So I try to kind of like set a bit the scene. We know that Roma communities used to be poor and discriminated before. We know that COVID came in and pushed everybody back. We know that the economic recovery and the programs that the governments made pushed some of the people forward, and some of the people that were pushed forward, they're the ones that were more able to absorb those programs. And now there's a question, what are we going to do in the upcoming period of time? So we're only going to go through 2 or 3 slides, Violeta, which is now kind of like the cue-in for you to tell us how did we look together at the Green Deal and the digitalization potential.
Yeah, thank you, Petrika. I'm happy to see so many friends and colleagues and people I haven't seen for a long time. So hello to everyone, and thank you very much for organizing the event and inviting Open Society Foundations. Just a little note, when we look at Roma or any vulnerable communities, for the last 10 to 20 years, we always look at anti-discrimination policies and legislation. We haven't really looked in the area of investments. We haven't looked in the area of jobs. We haven't looked in the area of employment in general. And why is that? When we know that the most important for every family, not just Roma or any vulnerable community, is what you're bringing on the table in the end of the day. So the idea is whether we as funders, but those also as partners and supporters, as civil society organizations, we understand what is the deal, where we should look at the most, what is the most important for these communities besides anti-discrimination. I'm not saying we shouldn't look at that area, but also what I want to send you as a message here is, please think what matters the most for families in the end of the day, and that is what kind of job they do they work or not, and what do they bring on the table. As the Green Deal came into force, and at least in Brussels, it became such a big news for everyone. We thought we should try to understand what the Green Deal is and how this important policy of the European Commission, of the EU, is trying to target also vulnerable people. So we started the research and we tried to analyze the Green Deal and looking at the funding, the instruments, and the related policies of the Green Deal. Maybe it's good to go through the slides as I'm talking. We understood that when it comes to skills, upskilling, reskilling, green jobs of the future by 2030, by 2050, vulnerable people are absolutely not prepared. Roma the least are not prepared. I don't know if Petrica mentioned, but I think you didn't mention this Fit for 55 package. This Fit for 55 package is a number of legislative documents which will entirely change the landscape of how industry and economy in the EU and Europe will work in the future. We asked entrepreneurs, Roma entrepreneurs, are you aware of this? Do you know what's happening actually in Brussels? Do you know that this legislation and changes in the law will impact your business? They're absolutely not aware. They heard about the name, but they were not aware. What is that? When we mention specific funding instruments, like the Just Transition Funds, the digital policies in the area of upskilling and reskilling, they were absolutely unaware. When we ask entrepreneurs also, do you have access to those funds? That was also a very, very, very limited answer that we received. And we understood that when we look towards the future in the area of green jobs, these communities are not prepared. They're not ready. And I have to give applause to DG NEAR that has been extremely revolutionary to support entrepreneurship in the Western Balkans, because none of the DGs currently covering EU countries does. So it's important that the DG NEAR paves the ground on what is important for those communities. And as we go further with the slides, I just want to share with you next, perhaps, just a few examples of the, maybe next slide, yeah, that we looked at. You can see this here. Oh, yeah, here, there, yeah. We looked at what are the challenges of Roma entrepreneurs. We looked also at the solutions. And as I mentioned, little knowledge or no knowledge, little access or absolutely no access. And we have some policy proposals of how this can be addressed. And to give you an example of what READY has done in a number of countries, maybe with the next slide. With the READY Digital Boost, it's interesting that when you allow an entrepreneur, you give them the know-how, you give them the technology, you have a person attached to them to explain them how this works, their businesses can boost. The guy that you can see is actually has never had anything in terms of digitalization for his business. And during COVID, his business suffered a lot. But thanks to READY's support, giving a little bit of digital boost, meaning a little bit of technical support in terms of how he can put his business online, Facebook, Twitter, and other online services, his business boosted during COVID. And this is just an example from Romania. If we can go next. This is an example of Bulgaria. It's a guy who is selling herbs, and you can see that his sales increased by 320%. And this is just an example to share how little we should do in order to boost businesses. And let's go to the next. Also, we have a Serbian example as well from a person who is selling clothes and also materials for clothing. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I think these are the questions for today. In fact, I think that's why Petrica wanted to start with the presentation, because we want to discuss how we can make this accessible in the panel, but also with you, how we can make funds accessible to Roma entrepreneurs, to Roma businessmen, but in general also to vulnerable people in the area of the green jobs, in the area of the future digital world that we are going to live in, and are people really prepared or not at all? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Violeta. So I think this has tried to set a bit the scene, and if the colleagues from the technical department tell me that our colleagues from Ukraine are live, then we can try to connect them, and then we'll get back to our panel. Hi, Isaura. Can you hear us?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So, thank you very much for connecting, Isaura and Anastasia. So we started a bit the conversation by saying that our minds and souls are together with the Ukrainian people, and especially with our dear Roma guys who are trying to defend their homeland, as well as with the Roma women who have had to leave, not only Roma women, but all women who had to leave their husbands and go abroad. So we'd like to give you the stage for you to tell us a bit about the experience, as well as, you know, saying whatever you think it's relevant for us to hear from your experience.
Тебе слово.
You can start.
Изаура, можешь начинать.
Переведи мне, что... Какой вопрос?
Можешь начинать говорить о себе, можешь представиться.
Окей, спасибо большое. Хочу... Слышно меня?
Yes, we hear you.
Да. Огромное вам спасибо за то, что вы меня пригласили на данное мероприятие, и для меня это большая честь поделиться с вами немножечко жизненным опытом, который был у меня в Украине, и вспомнить, также рассказать немножечко о жизни украинцев, да?
I'm very proud to participate in this event and to share with you my experience which I faced in Ukraine. Без вопросов. Продолжай рассказывать. Не будет вопросов, просто историю рассказывай.
Я поняла. Меня зовут Изаура Дрима, я приехала из города Николаева. Мне 27 лет, и на сегодняшний день нахожусь вот в Бухаресте, так как были вынуждены пойти на территорию Украины.
From Nikolaev city, I'm 27, and now I'm staying in Romania, in Bucharest, due to the war. I had to flee Ukraine.
Когда мы проживали в Украине, моя семья занималась торговым бизнесом. Торговый бизнес – это был единый жизненная наша деятельность, чем мы занимались в Украине. Моя семья занималась этим, так как не было, кроме опыта торговли, не было образования и не было рабочей деятельности для того, чтобы заниматься другим каким-то деятельностью.
When we lived in Ukraine, we had a trade business, and it was only a business which we ran because our family, all our life ran this business, and it's just only one thing which we were able to do in Ukraine.
Мы занимались торговым бизнесом. Пришлось, конечно же, закрыть магазины и закрыть торговый бизнес, оставить в Украине все так, как есть. Мы успели забрать только лишь свои, и то пару вещей своих, а все остальное оставили на территории Украины.
We fled Ukraine and we stopped our business. We had to close our shops and flee Ukraine. So now we aren't able to run this business.
Мы покинули Украину с большим страхом и риском, так как когда только начиналось военные действия, никто не знал, что может быть дальше с нашей жизнью. И поэтому пришлось покинуть территорию Украины, оставив все там так, как оно есть, и с большим страхом и риском что-то начинать заново и пытаться продолжать жить.
We were very afraid. And we didn't know what will happen to our life in the future, and it was a big risk and fear to leave our country.
Right. So, Isaura and Anastasia, I was wondering if you can tell us in one sentence, what should we do to enable you to restart a business either in Romania or someplace else in Europe? What should people working in the European Parliament or European Commission do to help you restart a trade business, for example?
Одним предложением, что люди, работающие в парламенте Евросоюза, могут сделать для того, чтобы вы, ваша семья могли снова продолжить ваш бизнес.
Так как очевидно, да, что мы оставили свой бизнес, полностью его закрыли и даже не думали что-то как-то сохранить, так как первое, о чем мы думали, это спасти свою жизнь. И чтобы начать свой бизнес заново, нужно хотя бы какой-то стартовый капитал, чтобы было с чего начинать. Так как очевидно, что сейчас средств на выживание, да, очень мало, и тем более открывать снова такой же бизнес, аналогичный, это торговый бизнес, просто нет возможности на данный момент, нету стартового капитала.
Of course, when we left Ukraine, we left all our properties there, and now we have a little money to start new business. So the main thing which we need is money for start-up to run our business here in Romania.
If I may, and thank you very much for joining us. I have two questions. The first one is, how was the situation, the treatment of Ukrainian Roma were fleeing the country? And the second, yes, please, if you want to make the translation, and then I will say the second one, the interpretation, sorry.
Как была эта ситуация с обращением с румынами в Украине?
And the second question is, it will be hopefully not so in not so long time end of the war, and then we are already preparing the reconstruction. What do you think needs to be done in this preparatory work for the reconstruction to be sure that when the measures are implemented, Roma are not left behind? Thank you.
И как ты считаешь, I'm so sorry, could you repeat the second? lost the main idea.
Do you want me to repeat?
Yes, please. So sorry.
So, on the reconstruction time, what needs to be done? What needs to be planned already now to be sure that Roma community also benefit from the reconstruction support?
Thank you. На данный момент, как ты считаешь, что должно быть сделано для того, чтобы во время процесса подготовки к реконструкции, да, к восстановлению, чтобы мы были уверены, что это пойдет на пользу ромскому комьюнити, ромской общественности? Что должно быть сейчас сделано для того, чтобы они также в будущем получили пользу от этой реконструкции?
Попытаюсь сформулировать то, как я понимаю, да, нужно в любом случае собраться всеми силами, не падать духом и верить, что жизнь наладится, и надеяться на то, что наша жизнь снова станет прежней. Не верить в себя и продолжать жить.
Okay, so the first thing is very important to keep calm, to believe in the better future, and to keep your mind calm.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anastasia and Isaura. We really thank you for taking the time, and we're all close to you. Okay, so may I suggest we move on with the key questions that we have. I would like to pass on the stage to Mr. Orhan Hussein, who's going to tell us a bit what RCC is doing and how he thinks we can improve the digitalization and green jobs in the Roma communities.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Petrika. Thank you for extending an invitation to the RCC, and thanks to the REDI for establishing a very close cooperation with the RCC on making a realization of both the digital and the green agenda for the Western Balkans. I will just add up to where Vili actually started her presentation and try to provide a very brief overview of how the green agenda and the digital agenda are currently being, at which stage they are in our region, and how they could be potentially utilized for the greater inclusion of the Roma communities. I would like to start here by mentioning that we should try to look a bit deeper into the situation, taking into consideration that we do have all the strategic frameworks and all the political commitment in place. Luckily, the Western Balkan region was also very easily, very quickly following up on the necessity to transform the region to become more digitally connected and more greener. And for this purpose, as you might know, there was an action plan that was adopted in October last year, elaborating the necessary steps to be taken by the governments of the Western Balkans in order to implement the commitments that have been taken with the green agenda. This action plan has 5 pillars that span over a period of time, and in all the pillars we definitely can find great windows of opportunity which can be of enormous benefits for the Roma communities. Here I would just like to mention a couple of ideas and a couple of examples that could be used as a food for thought, and hopefully also open the space for discussion. Taking into consideration what was already said, that as long as we do consider the Roma population as a human capital, which would greatly contribute to the fiscal benefits of the states, we do have great opportunities to ensure that we have both the economic development and the social inclusion part going hand in hand. And here I would like to kind of underline a couple of examples, as I said. The Green Agenda for the Western Balkans has a great focus on the circular economy. And as you might know, Roma actually are already part of the circular economy, with a great percentage of them being already engaged in the professions of collecting secondary raw materials. And we do believe that if this profession is appropriately regulated, appropriately formalized, it could have extremely big benefits, not only for the Roma community, who will continue to benefit from this sort of profession, but once we formalize it, it would have extremely big impact also on the on how this profession is being perceived by the general population, and as well with regards to the economic benefits that I already mentioned, that would go in addition to the state. Besides that, we do have a pillar that is dealing with decarbonization. The decarbonization pillar has obviously many measures, but one of the measures calls for exploring sustainable and reasonable energy efficient ways of heating our buildings and our homes. And unfortunately, as you might know, the Roma population in the region lives in very devastating housing conditions. And we strongly believe that if there are measures that are going to subsidize this sort of approach towards alternative and reasonable energy resources, the Roma population can definitely benefit in terms of improving the housing situation. In close relation to the housing situation, there is also a pillar within the Green Agenda that talks about depollution. And again, unfortunately, a great number of Roma neighborhoods throughout the Western Balkans are in very close proximity to extremely polluted and hazardous areas. So when talking about how we see our region being transformed more towards becoming green, definitely cleaning Roma neighborhoods should be at the top of the government's priorities in the region. So to my point here was to tell you that we do have both the political and the strategic framework. So there is this view of how policies should be implemented in the upcoming years. There is some sort of commitment from the governments, but I still believe that here the biggest challenge would definitely be funding. Not that funding is not available, but the fact that how governments use this type of funding and how much this type of funding is going to reach the Roma communities. Because at the end of the day, we do talk here about expensive investments in infrastructure in order to sort of develop this for the purpose of transformations towards green and digital. Very briefly also about the digital agenda, we also conducted a research on the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 on Roma in the Western Balkans. And one of the most shocking results of this research was the fact that in the past year, the dropout rate among the Roma population in the Western Balkans has increased by 11%, showing you just how much for some Roma neighborhoods it was very, very difficult to follow online classes, to receive quality education through this online education, and most importantly showing us a huge gap in the connectivity, access to connectivity in terms of access to internet and broadband infrastructure. Again, something related to infrastructure and something that would again require quite a lot of investments which might not necessarily be appropriately programmed and planned and reach the ones that are most in need. So What I'm trying to say is that we are currently at a very important crossroad. I mean, the COVID-19 has really shown us that our future obviously lies in transformations that are related both to green and to digital. And if we do not make a good use of how we place the Roma potentials, and because I would not say Roma needs, I would rather say Roma potentials, as we started this discussion on how much Roma could be the human capital that the region needs. Because on the one hand, we talk about depopulation, brain drain, migration, and on the other hand, we do have this extremely large number of young people who could definitely be appropriately trained with the necessary skills, digital skills, labor skills that are necessary for the implementation of the green agenda, and who could definitely bring a lot of revenues for the economic development of our region, something that is really needed and the governments are aiming for.
Thank you very much, Orhan, for this very short but very powerful summary. I fully agree with you that green and digital are very important, but investments are key. So I think with this, I would like to maybe pass on the mic to our colleague from EBRD, colleague panelist from EBRD, Mrs. Marjanovic Dragana, to kind of try to see what EBRD is doing in the region when it comes to green investments, when it comes to investments in digital infrastructure. How can we actually support Roma people to live in much cleaner villages, much cleaner environments? What do we do with the waste treatment, and so on?
Hi, yes. Oh, I think we have a mic. Is it okay now? Yes. Okay, so first of all, let me say how happy I am to have the opportunity to speak on behalf of EBRD today. And just to say that all of the speakers ahead of me have actually given me a tremendous introduction, and really to follow up on the last colleague. I mean, really what we always stress when we talk about inclusion is not only that it's the right thing to do, but that it's a smart thing to do. And this is what we always try to focus on, the economic gains and the business case for economic inclusion. In this respect, let me give a small maybe introduction first. So I'm from the Gender and Economic Inclusion team. And as such, the leave no behind is the kind of sentence is the fundamental principle upon which we are working. As you know, the EBRD obviously is an investment bank, but having this development component also, we're all obviously very interested and very keen to make sure that we're raising the overall well-being for the citizens in various many ways. We have various qualities that we address. I will be focusing on our work in the inclusion agenda, and the economic inclusion agenda. And as such, we really focus on building inclusive and gender responsive financial systems. So again, referring to what we've been talking about, we talk about access to finance, we talk about access to services, and also very, very importantly, we talk about access to skills and employment. And these are all topics that have been addressed and super relevant, obviously, for the question of the economic inclusion of Roma. Just last year, we've actually introduced 2 new strategies, one for the promotion of gender equality, and the other, the equality of opportunity strategy, which I'll focus on a bit more now. What we really try to do is to make sure that our investments and policy engagement tackle inequalities as they arise, not only due to matters related to questions that have been determined at birth, but also at large-scale shocks such as COVID, such as now the war on Ukraine, climate change, digitalization, and the future of work. Again, topics that have been discussed quite a bit today, and regional disparities, migration, urbanization, all of these processes that we're all aware that are taking place. So we do these, we support this kind of economic inclusion through various instruments, so to say, by promoting inclusive regions and cities, enhancing green, digital STEM, again, the jobs of the future, the skills of the future, talking again about financial systems, as I mentioned, and also looking at inclusive infrastructure solutions. And here I want to again refer back to the issue of internet and the shocking information that the dropout rate has increased by 11 percentage points. This is really detrimental, I think, and really one of the key areas that we need to be tackling. And in this respect, I think it's really worth mentioning two particular projects and initiatives that we have been implementing in some of the countries of the Western Balkans and hoping to expand to others as well in the near future. One is related to our investments in rural broadband expansion, which not only has as a goal the development of the infrastructure and as such bringing the services internet closer to the rural populations and underserved regions and households. But because we are aware of the fact that bringing an internet cable isn't necessarily enough to ensure that also the populations are able to benefit from the advantages that this broadband may bring, we are now also working closely with the Ministry of Telecommunications, but also the Ministry of Education in Serbia in particular, to develop a kind of basic digital skills learning program that will be rolled out across these rural municipalities where this broadband will now be brought. We are now at this stage focusing on outreach activities to focus and to make sure that we reach out to rural women. But Roma populations as well would be a great, let's say, candidate and would benefit greatly from this type of training program. So this is something that we will be looking at also exploring in the future. And another thing, which probably is actually why the EBRD has as such been invited to participate in this event today and talk about Roma inclusion, is a role that we have assumed in a working group established by the West Bank, where the WBIF, on establishing an approach, basically a methodology for inclusive and socially responsible procurement. This is because one of our kind of landmarks, so to say, our signature programs that we have been implementing across the Western Balkans, but also wider, are our inclusive procurement programs. This basically means that these large infrastructure projects that we invest in, that we finance, we kind of ensure that there's a clause introduced into the tender documentation which basically obliges the contractors, the companies engaged on the construction works, to engage a certain number of youth, usually, to develop their skills and offer them employment opportunities during the construction work. Up to now, we've been mainly working with unskilled youth in general, but also offering internship positions to young graduates in a much smaller scale, smaller number of participants. But now, within this work we're doing with the WIF, we are seeking to pilot and to develop an approach that will actually focus on Roma inclusion, on involving the Roma communities in this work, also with a view of in the future potentially making this a standard clause in WBIF investments. So actually it would be it's something that we need to still pilot. We're in an initial phase of developing the approach. The piloting has still not commenced, but we're really looking forward to making some important inroads in this respect also when it comes to the inclusion, skills development, working with the Roma community, with civil society organizations, Roma mediators, to really first understand the need for skills development in the community that would be relevant to these works, develop also particular, career guidance, so to say, opportunities for young Roma to help them select the right occupations and to make a dedicated individual approach.
And I think this is a fantastic introduction. Thank you very much, Dragana. I think this is a fantastic introduction for LOTE and for the things that the European Commission is doing on top of all of the investments that DG NEAR and the European Commission is trying to promote via the Western Balkans investment framework. So, Lotte, what can you tell us?
Thanks a lot, and very nice to be here with you, especially that it's a real event and not a virtual one. That's wonderful, even though it's also fantastic that we have this possibility to connect with people further away. So I'm the last speaker of this panel, and you've seen me striking out things that other people have very elegantly already described. So I'll have a slightly compressed presentation now. But as several speakers already said, first of all, we know the challenge. Well, first of all, we know the opportunity. The green and digital agenda are really important transitions, major transitions for our societies, and we need to manage these transitions so that the opportunities for the most vulnerable and are realized, and also that risks of falling behind are also mitigated. And I think that with the COVID-19 already there has been this strong realization of the need to, in general, pay more attention to economic and social development, and for sure the Russian war in Ukraine has made that even more clear. So we know that the challenge for the Roma community is very big. It's already been referred to many times. I think the numbers, they just deserve to be repeated again. For example, that we have in the EU, 62% of Roma are actually NEETs, as they're called, the young people not in education, employment, or training. It's a terrible number. And in the Western Balkans region, this number is even higher. And Orhan was referring to the study of the RCC on the impacts of COVID and the dropout rates that we saw in schools, very, very high rates of dropout, and again caused largely by the lack of access to digital technologies. That is really already underlining one area that we need to focus on. Orhan also was saying that we already have the policy framework in place, the political framework, and also the strategic framework. We have the EU framework, and there are Western Balkan-owned declarations on what needs to be done. And all these frameworks encourage and demand that there is integration and mainstreaming of equality and inclusion in all sectoral efforts. And that is applicable not only, of course, to within the EU, but also to everything that we as DG NEAR, as the European Commission, as the EU is trying to do in the Western Balkans as well. So the key reference document that we're all hearing about is the Economic Investment Plan, which is, in very simple words, a 9 billion euro investment package, which is designed precisely to generate more growth and to try to bridge the gaps in economic development that we have between the EU and the Western Balkans. And that communication on the economic investment plan, it's very, very clear that social inclusion and human development and support for the most vulnerable have to be addressed. And now I know time is getting very short, but for example, you can take the flag, there are 10 flagships here, and number 8 here is dealing with digital infrastructure. And here reference is made to the importance of reaching equality and access to digital education, especially for the Roma community. When it comes to the green agenda, it's a fantastic opportunity. It's not only about sort of investments, it's also about changing the whole set of incentives for business, and thereby it creates new opportunities to make businesses of things that were not businesses in the past. And here, it's true, we're talking about waste management, and I think we have discussed this quite a lot internally, because you don't want to somehow participate in deepening stereotypes or prejudices of the role of Roma in this sector. But I like the way you put it also, Orhan, that if you work to make this a more formalized economy, you also have a lot of potential to also change the perceptions about this extremely important job and make it something that one can have pride in. So I think the green and the digital, it will bring opportunities and it brings challenges. And from our side, DG NEAR, we think we need to work on both these dimensions. For sure, on the one hand, we want to very actively encourage and support the Roma entrepreneurs to, first of all, get acquainted with these topics. I think we saw very interesting examples from Reddy here, and then to very actively consider how their businesses can be take these topics into account. I think just the example that was provided from the OSF on the moving a business into the digital arena and the ways that this can multiply revenue very practically, I think is a very good example. But then we also need to work to ensure that no one is left behind. I think EBRD already referred to the fight against the digital divide. And here, for sure, we're investigating through the Western Balkans investment framework how to develop a regional broadband infrastructure, it was already referred to, and to reinforce the access to high-speed internet, and even in more remote areas. I think this is the key point. It's not just for the central areas, but it has to look how do you get this to the remote areas. We're supporting also digitalization of schools. For example, we have a project of 23 million euro in Kosovo, which is mainly relying on loans that will connect more than 1,000 primary and secondary schools to ICT infrastructure. All these things are part of what needs to be done. And I see many, many ways that we as a donor also can support Roma inclusion in this area. I think we have already several projects ongoing that are already providing kind of a basic approach to working on other topics. And I think these can quite easily be modified to also address more in depth both the green and the digital agenda. So we already have Orhan here representing the Roma integration project that we finance implemented by the RCC. This program already offers support to mainstream Roma inclusion issues into government's various sector strategies. And I think as governments move into working on the green and working on the digital even more, this is the opportunity also for this project to point out where there are opportunities. Similarly, we have a completely different project. It's the Romacted project that we implement together with the Council of Europe. This works at the local level, trying to build more productive relations between local Roma communities and local authorities. The idea is to basically facilitate a dialogue about what the needs are and how they can be addressed. And I mean, sometimes we talk about the digital and the green as something very overarching, but in fact, in the end, it is things that are happening at the local level. So I think here as well, there is plenty of opportunity to try and work at the local level with the local authorities and try and sort of match what are many of these examples that we had. How can you work with improving the state of the areas, even from pollution and so on, where Roma works, but also how do you get more employment in this area. And there is more and more, but I know time is very short. And the EBRD, I think Dragana gave a lot of examples that I had here on the list, but that she already explained very well. I think that is in a way perhaps where the most innovation lies, to look how do we use public procurement in a way which actually also brings in a more mandatory way, social inclusion approaches. So I think I should stop there, despite having even more to say, but I think we stop it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lotta. And I have to say, I'm also very, very intrigued by the responsible procurement initiative, which I think really deserves much more space. And I really hope we should have a separate conversation on that, because this is the way you can support businesses, by forcing the big players to introduce in their supply chain smaller businesses or businesses from vulnerable communities. So I think we're running already behind schedule. I wonder if there's one question from the audience that we could pick up before we move ahead. If not, then I would like to thank very much the panelists, and I would welcome.
Question.
Right. So Violeta has a question.
I have a question because I didn't know that in our study that we did on analysis of the Green Deal, I didn't know that Western Balkans and DG has done that much. And I mean, talking to Orhan here, considering that we have in Western Balkans around 500,000 Roma on official data, not by census data. And then in EU countries, we have about 6 million Roma. And this is how much DG NEAR does on Western Balkans. Why the rest of the DGs cannot do the same for EU countries? What do you think, Marta?
I think that if I answer this question, my colleagues will kill me, so I prefer to pass.
It's a rhetorical question.
No, it's just interesting also for our audience to understand why do we have in DG NEAR this, what we have, and DG NEAR has planned already projects to boost jobs and investments and growth and ensure that Roma are part not from the gray economy, but they become part of the formal economy, and why the rest of the Commission services are not able to do that. It's just for you to think. Thank you.
Okay, on this note, I would like to thank once again my panelists and especially Dragana for joining us, as well as Isaura and Anastasia. Thank you very much also for your patience.
And thank you very much. And I propose that we move on to panel 2. And I would like to call to this stage Mr. Uragaci, Mr. Demirovsky, and Mr. Sevhir. You can join us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us, and also thank you very much for Rita Nella that is joining us online. And I will also to thank you all. I would like to thank you all, you present in the room and also following online, because you keep with us, and I know that is the last meeting of a long day, so thank you for bearing with us. I'm sure you are not going to be unhappy with the effort you do. You will see that is a very interesting part of the today's discussions. So I have the pleasure to have with me the different persons, and I think we have spoke in the first panel about the political framework. We are about the financial institutions, about the different very interesting studies. And this is important because that gives us an intellectual basis to look about the future. But what is at stake in this panel is about the reality on the ground. These persons around me and also Dritan has contributed on the ground to implement this intellectual concept of the possibilities that are in the digital and green agenda. So some question about points of order, as we say. We have only, I think, 35 minutes ahead of us. We have aiming to have at least a last question, if we have any question and answer on this point. So I would like to launch this discussion with a question after introducing all of you. And I would like also to ask you to speak and answer this initial question 5 minutes maximum. And if I raise my hand, please, it does not mean that what you are saying is not interesting and important. What that means is that we are going too late on time, and that, I'm trying to catch this impossible objective to keep a time frame. So I would like, before giving you the floor and doing the first questions, to introduce yourself. We have here all kind of very interesting backgrounds when we talk about the reality on the ground. We have Mr. Uraguchi, who is a development economist, and he has a multi-country experience on designing, managing, and advising civil society investment projects. We have also with us Mr. Demirovsky, who is a consultant that I understand has also worked for the European Parliament at the time of his professional experience. And he is a business consultant that is helping global enterprises to enhance this operation, and has always also been active in the environmental field. We have Dritan online with us that brought me 3 weeks ago to visit a very interesting project in Albania, in a Roma school that was bringing the environmental dimension. Dritan is working as an open society foundation in Albania and has experience in higher education, but also in research. And last but not least, we have Mr. Aziz Sekir. He is a member of the Roma Entrepreneurship Development Initiative, READY, and he is one of the founders of READY Skopje. And Mr. Sekir has now the responsibility, between other things, to be the general manager of READY Recycling. So thank you very much of all of you for joining this panel, and allow me to launch the discussion, no more than 5 minutes per person, with the following question. Can you share with us very briefly what are your activity and the opportunities and challenge you think there is for the Roma community to be working in the future more on green and digital dimension? And if you can give to them, so that will be my second question, and advice also to these persons that have this wish, but also to international organizations that are willing to support or to finance this kind of projects. So the floor is yours. Let's start with Mr. Uraguchi. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm from Helvetas, which is one of the largest and oldest Swiss development organization. So we work, in these two critical areas of the green transition, but also digitalization. Our key kind of guiding principle, as the previous speakers talked about, are the SDGs, leave no one behind. But unfortunately, if you look at the practice, many people are being left, because these two critical points are actually exacerbating, worsening, exclusion. So when you look at the green transition, we work on two critical areas. The first one is adaptation. So adaptation means increasing resilience, addressing fragility. But that's not enough. We also work on what we call mitigation. If you look at the statistics globally, 70% of pollution is caused by 100 companies, 100 companies. So I think we need to work in terms of changing the business models of private sector enterprises. And that's what the mitigation aspect talks about. So when it comes to digitalization, we also work on two critical aspects. The first one is to take, ICT, but also business processing outsourcing as a sector to create, opportunities. The other one is to use digitalization to facilitate access to information, access to skills, and opportunities. So these are very critical aspects. So to summarize, what I call 3+1 is our approach. The first one is we look at the skills aspect. Do Roma communities have relevant and accessible skills For example, we talk a lot about green skills. What do you mean by green skills? Do they have, access to information to use, electronic devices? Knowledge is not a click away for many of the Roma communities. So that's the skills part. The other aspect is what we call intermediation, access to information, career guidance, offering them also opportunities, where they can invest. And the last part is what I called to work with private sector enterprises to change their business models. So skills, intermediation, and private sector investment. And then the one is around policy. I think the previous panel talked about. But I think the policies also should be not general, but they should be also firm-specific and community-specific policies. If you talk about general policies, they remain here. But policies that are really practical, affecting the day-to-day lives of the Roma communities would be very important. So these are, the key aspects that we are taking in programs like, that I'm working in the Western Balkans and in Eastern Partnership countries called Reconomy with the Swedish government. These are the aspects that we are working, for example, with READY to address, the problem of exclusion and being disadvantaged. So I stop there.
Amazing. You were much shorter than the 5 minutes. So thank you very much for your very interesting contribution. And thank you also for keeping the time and be sensitive to the time deadline. And definitely, I love your SIP skills intermediation and private sector support strategy. I fully agree that this SIP is a winning target. So thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Demirovsky for answering the same question that I raised and having the same time control. Thank you.
I'm starting to feel not well because 5 minutes, I don't think I'm going to make it. Not because that the time is very short, but because I want to say so much more and share many of the experience that I would like to share with this group. I'm here after a long time because I worked as a stagiaire for one MP long time ago, and it's good to be here. So what I want to use this opportunity is these halls, these meetings are very important to spread message to the people who are out there. So this is why I want to use this community here to help us. My company is working on software development. Our main office is in Hong Kong. We are targeting Asian market, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia. Now we're starting to target some African countries. And regarding digitalization, I think that the Roma community has a big potential to grow on this area. Our company also invests in some other sectors like health and some trading. We are opening a hospital in Skopje, 3,000 meters squared. We just finished the opening. The main director, the medical director of the hospital is a Roma doctor. So we want to show to the people that Roma can run a hospital and be successful at it. And as to digitalization, as I said, these people can spread a message here and inform the people what is ahead. So we as a technological company, it's very hard to us to explain to the local community what is coming up and how we could develop the market in the future. So this is why I want to share what we are planning as a company, and maybe you and the people who are here can prepare the people on the ground to start looking for new businesses. So I want to speak about 3 to 4 very important topics. The first one is that we need to skill our Roma people on the ground to start thinking a little bit globally. And the first way is that we need access to remote operation, which means that we need to find people who can work remotely for other countries, for other people, for other markets. This means that if you have a skill and if you have a knowledge, you are not limited to the house, to the mahala, to the city that you work with, but you need to be educated to use platforms that you can offer your knowledge outside of your living place. The second thing that we want to do is to explore the computing and the information and the data that we are owning as a people. Because most of the digital companies are mostly blamed that they are not using the data correctly, but the people are the ones who are actually giving the data to the companies that we are doing. So to inform the people, how do they manage their data? How do they provide information to the data owners? And how can they profit from the data that they own? Because at the time that it's coming, the data can be a very important tool how to create future strategies, how to create an impact on the local level. So if we start to teach people, and this I think that you are very good at it, will be very interesting. Then the third one that we want to explore is renewable energies. This is something that it's very well spoken, but the Roma community is not using it because they don't see it, and they see it just as a word, renewable energies. But if we start to negotiate with the communities and explain them how they can use renewable energies into the food processing, into their waste management, as Asip will speak later, I think that there is a huge opportunity for a company like us to make a bigger impact on the ground. It will be easier for us to work with the Roma community, and it will be easier for the Roma community to be prepared for the future that is coming. So I think that I've managed to be less than 5 minutes. But the point is that we are asking you as a community to help us as a companies to make more impact on the ground with more realistic results. And I think that if we are joined together, we are here to offer our services and our cooperation. And I believe that we can make it together.
Thank you very much. And if we continue like this, we will be even able to have a question and answer time. So please start already to think on your questions. There are hope in the air that we will manage to get that. And I think now on my list I have Dritan. Dritan, are you with us online? Yes.
Indeed I am.
You are. Thank you very much for joining us, Dritan, and please, the floor is yours. And you have, even online, you have the main duty than the rest, to respect the time. Thank you.
I'll try. Thank you for inviting me. I'm going to present briefly a regional, Western Balkan pilot initiative, which is led by OSF Albania, and is implemented in Albania, Serbia, Kosovo, and North Macedonia. Before doing that, I have to say that indeed green energy transition is an important process to address the climate change crisis. But on the other hand, we believe that it's an important opportunity also to democratize the energy production market by leading to a different economic model which distributes welfare and opportunities rather than concentrate power and capital in few hands. So the pilot we are implementing is based on this rationale. I'm going to take just one example in a rural area in Albania, the school that Marta visited a few weeks ago. And it is a rural village where around 500 inhabitants are living there. It's a typical remote area. And what we did through our project in partnership with both the school community and the municipality there, we developed photovoltaic solar panels in the rooftop of the public school, which has a majority of students from the Roma population. And we enabled the school to produce its own energy, electric energy. On the other hand, before the project, the heating system was based on burning woods, and of course the smoke from the burning was disrupting the learning process, because the smoke entered into the classrooms, and of course it affected also the air pollution. And due to the project, we established a new heating system which is based on electricity. So currently the school is producing its own electricity, and the heating is being fueled by the electricity produced by the school. During spring and autumn, the school is energy neutral, meaning that it produces 100% of the energy that the school needs. And during the summer is energy positive, meaning that the surplus, they are producing more energy than the school is consuming, and so they are contributing also to the grid through energy, and that is an important signal also in terms of the prices, electricity prices crisis. So they are contributing to, to greater public interest in that sense. What is important to emphasize is that we have an agreement with the municipality, which introduces an important incentive mechanism for the school community to engage into this climate action. The sum that is saved by the energy bill, since the school is producing the energy itself, the municipality is going to transfer it to the school as a grant, so that the school is capable to address their own needs. And for marginalized, schools, which of course public funding is quite scarce, this income generation mechanism is quite crucial, and it mobilized and created large consensus among, local actors when it comes to, their, the support towards, this climate action initiative. Now, in terms of opportunities, there are 4 main dimensions when it comes to Roma. The first dimension is connecting the Roma community to the governance of the emerging green energy production market. The second dimension is allowing Roma to develop businesses that offer, installs the photovoltaic infrastructure in public institutions, or even in households or businesses, rooftops. The third dimension is employment. So, this green transition is going to produce employment, and of course the need for manpower is it's growing rapidly, because it's an emerging market and the competition is quite scarce currently, and of course Roma could benefit from this opportunity. And the last one is addressing energy poverty. You might know that many Roma households could not pay the electricity price, and in many cases they are criminalized because they establish illegal connections. And if programs are going to be designed in order to support the photovoltaic rooftops in their households, then I guess this issue could be addressed very effectively and sustainably in the long run. So they can produce energy for themselves, but also the surplus could, go to the grid, so that the government could use, that amount of energy to address also other, needs.
Dritan, can you see me? I'm raising my hand. Do you see me?
Yeah, I did finish. Okay. I finalized.
Thank you very much for your intervention and for the contribution. I was really impressed by the school project you showed me in Albania. And the last speaker is Mr. Sekir, or is Mr. Asif? I'm not sure. That will be Mr. Asif Sekir. And you are leading the Ready Recycling. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marta. Given that my colleagues didn't use their time, I think that I can use theirs. Right? I have 2 more minutes, right? Anyway, thank you for the question. It is really my pleasure to speak about the green economy, especially when we put an emphasis to the Roma inclusion into this, and when we speak about Roma that are really present in this question for many decades, and they are not seen as they are, even though they contribute to the safe and clean environment, even they are part of green economy, not only on recycling, but also maybe on the collecting secondary raw materials, helping cleaning the parks, and etc. And these people are mostly seen as ones who do make the mess in the city, and especially the ones who are most discriminated. So I will share with you maybe one story, how we started with the initiative, how the idea was born, because it was 2019 when I was working as a program manager at Ready, and I was working with business plans development, with business clubs, with entrepreneurs. I was working with nice suits and ties. And on my day when I was going home from the office, I saw an old lady how he's carrying a trolley full with plastic and cardboard, and he was going home from one municipality to another one. And I was passing by car, so I was really shocked because I saw that she's in old ages, and I was really curious how to help her. So I stopped and checked with her, how can I help her? Because I didn't know at that moment what should I do. Like, should I put the plastic and paper on my trunk because I was drying and to go, or should I just check with her what's going on? So the old lady answered to me, "Namochavo akatar sumsiklimete kerawakawa," which in Romanes means, "No, my son, I'm used to do this." I felt very bad, honestly. I felt very responsible and sad because I was working for developing of the economic situation in Roma communities. I was working with entrepreneurs, with business ideas and models, but I really couldn't help this woman. And then this is how the question appeared in the organization, and we started to think about helping Roma informal waste collectors. So we had a meeting with an NGO that is working on Roma issues, especially on vulnerable groups. And we got into the idea that we are the ones who are responsible and that we need to take on lead this initiative. So we initiated meetings, several meetings with stakeholders, with government ministries, with local authorities. But at the end, they put the incentive that we are the ones who should take care of this. We said, okay. We started to think about the right business model that will fit both parties, the society, but also the Roma informal waste collectors. So this is the period, that was the period when it took us a long time to go back on the trials and attempts that were made already with other initiatives, and they failed. So we checked, why do they fail? We went deep on the field. We started discussions with the Roma communities. We started with the informal waste collectors to hear what is their feeling about. And we started to design the business model together with them. So in 2020, we registered a company, which is registered by Ready NGO. It is a regular company, unfortunately, because we don't have the law for social enterprises. But somehow we started to design the business model as a social enterprise. And we told these people that this company should be your company in the future. We will try to develop your capacities working with you, so at the following period, you are the ones who will lead this initiative. So this is an initiative that obtained a license for collection and transport from Ministry of Environment in 2020. And it took us long, honestly, because of the whole administration process, because of the challenges that we had on the field. And because of the complexity of the whole process, we splitted the whole implementation process in 3 phases. The first phase, which is collection and transport of non-hazardous waste. It is currently operating from last year, October. And it is enabling hiring people. Actually, these are the Roma informal waste collectors, organizing them and formalizing them by employing in the company, while establishing a system for primary waste separation. It means that these collectors are placing waste bins in household companies and buildings, so people can have opportunity to separate waste plastic on one container and paper on another one. It showed us a positive case, and we started to think about the scaling up. So this is how the second phase appeared. It is actually storage and treatment of the collected materials that would enable us adding values on the materials that these people are collecting. So we were thinking all the time how we can just expand this network and how we can facilitate their activities. And we came up to the idea that we need to put the digital component in the second phase, so we can innovate a smart waste bin that will facilitate their work, but also to have an online platform that will give them access to the containers and also to the other points that the households are getting. Shortly, I will finish. So this is the phase that it's not operating currently, but we are planning to. And the third phase is actually not only collection and storage, but also recycling, upcycling, and repairing electronic waste, and also other waste of streams. So the third phase is actually the vision of the whole process of building a recycling center, but not only for collection, but we have all the waste streams here. And that a process that will enable us to have a better picture for the Roma in the green economy, to prove and to increase their dignity, because they really do care about the environment, except of getting income to their families. So I think that if I go back now to my story with an old lady, unfortunately we couldn't employ her. Why? Because for employing her, it was required from us to have a driving license of this person. Or if that person doesn't have, then we need to have at least elementary school for that person, so we can get the driving license. That it was not possible, actually. And given this, we thought that we started to think about a systemic solution. Actually, we need definitely to start work simultaneously with other stakeholders and to try increase their dignity and their job activity. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you very much. And as I told you, someone is willing to make a question to these people. No one? Yes, please take the floor.
I mean, how not to make a question, Marta? This is so empowering to hear. I just don't know why people don't react, because when we talk about Roma, as I mentioned earlier, it was always as a position of a victim, that we are constantly the victim of discrimination or something else. I mean, this is the power, this is the future. So, I mean, my admirations to all that we've heard. I hope that Helvetas would expand its services and support in the rest of the Western Balkan countries, if that's the idea. I think that would be great, and I think Open Society Foundations would be very much willing to cooperate on that with Redi and you. I hope, Marta, that we can showcase as a positive model and upscale what DigiNear does throughout the rest of the Commission services. I want to challenge you on that, if you'd accept this challenge. And my really compliments to Ferki directly and Asip for these great stories. And definitely big time Petrica Dulgheru, who actually, without him, we wouldn't have this discussion here, and without Marta, absolutely. So I just want to say big compliments to you all, and I would like that our audience is a bit more cheerful. Come on, guys, it's about business, jobs, future, the green. I mean, if you entered in the Roma community and you see so much garbage around, imagine by 2030 we enter in a Roma community is completely clean. And the plastic and the waste is reused and used in a circular economy, and it becomes a resource. So thank you so much for the great panel, and looking forward to continue this work with you.
Thank you very much. And I pass the floor to Mr. Turagut to, I think, take up your challenge of Helveta's increasing their activity.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you see, what I talked about was the what and why. You know, I did not touch the how question, you know, just to save time. If I go to the how question, you know, so we started now with the recycling, the waste management. I think we should be a little bit careful, you know, not to reinforce stereotypes. I think there are more opportunities for the Roma communities. So what we do in terms of, you know, scaling up. Now, what we hear here now is islands of success. I think it should be scaled up, right? Because how about Roma communities in Moldova? How about Roma communities in Kosovo? 5 years ago, I was in Kosovo talking to the Roma communities. Still, there are people who are excluded, you know? So in order to expand, we need three things. The first one is we need to understand what are the other opportunities going beyond, you know, these anecdotal evidence. It's recycling, it's the Roma communities. How about other opportunities in agribusiness? How about other opportunities in ICT technology? I think we need to understand what prevents the community from accessing these opportunities. For that, we need to do proper analysis. That's the first one. The second one is, how do we translate now the findings to practical solutions? You see, what we see as a problem in the development community is NGOs are part and parcel of the system. We should stop that. Our role should be facilitative. Our role should be temporary. There are a number of, you know, actors like, you know, RADI, universities, government institutions that we need to support. For that, we need to understand their incentives and capacities. Why do they need Helvetas? There must be a problem there, you know, so our role is to facilitate. The last one is, which is really difficult for us to work, is to build the evidence. Do we really know what works, what doesn't work? Are we really communicating, you know, the results? To bring back to the design, you know, to design, to expand beyond North Macedonia, to go, you know, across the Western Balkans. So I have a colleague there, Lea Shaluk, who is managing it, actually, who is walking the talk. We have, as Helvetas in their economy program, what we call the Western Balkan Roma Initiative. That goes beyond the waste management. We are discussing now together. So, but for that, what I mentioned is proper analysis, properly knowing our role, and generating also evidence and bringing back to the design will be very critical for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A second question, but very short the question and even shorter the answer, please.
Thank you. Not even a question, but a story, because I think people love stories. And I will be as short as possible. My name is Ludovic Raffi. I'm here with several hats. Saying one of them, I'm a REDI founder, so since 2012 when it started. But the other one, which I want to talk, is about the fact that I'm a living example of what Mr. Ferki and also Mr. Zenebe talked about. I'm working as a system engineer here in Belgium since now 7 years. I'm a Roma, and also I think really the example that we need to follow is our former or ancestors, the Indians. We have so many people working in ICT from India. So for me, they are the best example to follow, because in the end, when you work in such position, honestly, all those equipments behind, for me, I know how to handle them. And when you know those things to handle, all the doors are opening. So this would be actually a way to break stereotypes, and like Mr. I cannot remember your name because it's a different, Zenebe, I will try to remember it from now on. But it's the way to say, okay, not just garbage and associate with Roma. Think Indians and ICT. It's the same way that we could do it. But for this, indeed, two things there need to be invested. And I think here in the European institutions, education for Roma communities, and not only Roma, but vulnerable communities, it's mandatory and it's very high level on the agenda, but also investing, like Ferki was saying, on the languages. So this is one of the things that will allow you to have open doors. Working remotely, I did this during COVID and so on, and also allows you to be able to, help out the ones that are less fortunate. Because once you are well, and Petrika and myself, for example, we are able to establish NGOs which will later on help out the Roma community. So indeed, please invest and put education for Roma communities and vulnerable communities really high up, and you will see good results. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your statement. Before I pass the floor to Petrika for the conclusions, allow me to share with you some issues on this discussion, these interesting discussions. First of all, I think you all talk about very inspiring examples, and I hope that in the future we will not talk about islands, but about continents that are created.
Hallelujah.
With, inshallah.
Inshallah, yes.
The second point that I would like to do is about this panel really prove that we are not on a nice intellectual debates, that they have opened doors for you. And it's important that all these doors that are open, you push and go through that. There are examples. The success is at reach. And it was shown in one of your studies. We invest one and you have 320% increase. The green and digital agendas are now very top on the priorities on the European Union, for member states, as Lotte was saying, for enlargement region. It's clear that the ones working or willing to work in these areas, we have the wind in their sails. But as the proverb says, if we go to arrive to a good harbor, we not only need to have a good wind, but we need to know we are sailing to. So thank you very much, and back to you, Petrika, for the conclusions.
Thank you very much, Marta. So I think today we started off the conversation with a question. Are we or we are not leaving some people behind? And I think, to me, what we heard today from the European Commission, from EBRD, from Helvetas, from the Open Society Foundations, from different entrepreneurs is, even if we do leave some people behind, we don't do it because we want to. I think we have the right commitment and we have the right organizational kind of like mindset, but there's some things that we don't know how. We either don't have the right infrastructure, we either don't have the right information coming directly from the ground, we might not have the right tools to be able to get the funding from where it is available to where it's actually needed. And what I do here and what I heard for the past 2 hours is actually quite a lot of commitment at the personal level, quite a lot of commitment and willingness to go the extra mile to make sure that indeed we don't leave people behind and that we try to bring everybody together with us. What I think as a follow-up we would need to do is try to commit that we reorganize this meeting in the same format in about 6 months, either here in the European Parliament or in the European Commission, to try to look at how can we work together better, Helvetas, Open Society, the non-profit, the business community, together with Ferki, so that we do bring the message that Roma businessmen are willing to work and develop their communities, but obviously they cannot do this on their own. They need to have someone to share their message and their needs. I think sitting down together to discuss how can we learn from the things that DigiNear is experimenting in the Western Balkans, how can we bring DG Employment, DG Regio, all of the other DGs which are relevant, and look at what can we do in Romania, what can we do in Bulgaria, what can we pilot. And I think finally, I very much like the point that Ludovic made about skills. It was the same point that Asip made when it came to talking about the old lady, that even if you do want to help someone, they might be actually a bit too far off from where you can pick them up. So I think building in skills so that they can benefit from the programs that you're making, I think this is really going to be the key challenge. So I'd really want to have a follow-up conversation on this in about 6 months, and hopefully if we work together, we will not leave anyone behind. Thank you very much.
Last information, I'm told that in this building, in the 12th floor, there is a cocktail. I don't know until when, but if you're going to join, you are welcome.
Yeah. If I may, so the cocktail is on the 12th floor in the PH something building, which where is the Mickey Mouse? You know where is the Mickey Mouse restaurant? So you have to go to the 3rd floor. Mickey Mouse. Okay. Then go direction to the Mickey Mouse, and then you go to the 12th floor. So if you go now, I can still help some people to get there.
All right.
Yes? Thank you. Huh?
Yes.